Internet, Daniel here, and I love movies, at least when Hollywood doesn't totally ruin them. And first things first, this is my spoiler warning. If you have not seen the movie Wonder Woman yet, and you don't want it to be spoiled for you, pause the video right now, go see the movie, come back, and then watch the video. Or, if you want to see my spoiler-free review, I'll leave it down in the description below, as well as in the card in the upper right-hand portion of the video. So again, spoilers ahead, you have been warned. Is everyone gone? Awesome. So Wonder Woman was pretty great, right? It had some great characters, great action, great cinematography, and even some great music. So let's talk about it. So the movie starts off with a narration as Diana walks through the city of present-day Paris. She talks about how she used to want to save the world, which on first viewing was a really interesting line. You don't see many heroes that say, I used to want to save the world. It kind of got me wondering, what exactly happened to make her change her mind on that view? But I appreciated it even more on subsequent viewings because this one line, and really the narration as a whole, is very telling. Diana mentions how she used to know so little about the world, and goes on to say that there's a great darkness inside each and every one of us, and what one does when faced with the truth is a lot more complicated than you'd think. It basically sets up Diana's entire character arc in a way that not a lot of movies do nowadays. Then she gets an old World War I photo from Bruce Wayne, and we cut back to the past. So this movie does take place during World War I, but you wouldn't know it by what's going on in the Mascara. In fact, everything's quite peaceful, but as we later learn, this is only the case because the Amazons have been neglecting their duty given to them by their creator, Zeus. You see, the Amazons in this movie were created to protect the world against Ares, who has a jealous streak that would rival even the likes of Gaston. Yeah, I know, right? Who'd have thought Professor Lupin was the jealous type? Zeus also gave the Amazons the Mascara as a place that would be protected from Ares' influence. And luckily for the Amazons, Zeus even had enough forethought to give them a gift in the form of a sword that had enough power to kill a god. And with the amount of buildup that they gave the sword in the first half of the movie, I can only assume that it's going to be extremely effective throughout the entire film. What's that? How do you get... Whoa, stop the review. How are all these people getting into the Mascara? I mean, didn't we just establish that this was a place that Zeus gave the Amazons and it had magical barriers to keep Ares out? I mean, just look at how easily that German officer leans through the barrier. I mean, just look at it. You know, I don't see why the Amazons have to be so worried about Ares. I mean, if Zeus beat Ares... and Zeus's powers aren't even enough to keep German officers out of the Mascara, and Ares hasn't even been able to strike at the Amazons over all these years. That's already been established, so... what are they even worried about? So anyway, Diana saves Steve Trevor, the Germans chase him to the shoreline, the Amazons shoot first and ask questions later, and Antiope dies. Yeah, I know. But despite that somewhat unnecessary death scene, I did actually like what they did with the action here. They really did a good job of showing off the Amazons' fighting style here. They're flipping all over the place, they're swinging back and forth along the cliffs, and they're using their shields as like boosts when people are jumping up in the air and firing arrows at the soldiers. They really did a good job with that. And Steve Trevor actually saw that last bit and would remember it and use it to great effect during the No Man's Land battle scene later in the film. We also learned that Steve Trevor would be terrible at 20 questions.
I can't tell you that.
Oh, and that he's...
Spy!
Oh! Jeez, Chris. Inside voice, alright? The acoustics in here are just fine.
So Steve fills us in on what's going on in the wider world.
As it turns out, World War I is underway, and it seems to be a war without end. Which is a slap in the face to Diana because...
This must be Ares.
What are you talking about, child?
Forgive me, Senator, but the man called it a war without end. Millions of people already dead. Like nothing he's ever seen. Only Ares could do such a thing.
Yeah, that was pretty much word for word, taken right from the legend. Probably is Ares. But thank the gods we don't have to worry about him, right? After all, we've got Zeus's mighty god-killer sword. Diana can just take that, find Ares, one stab, bing bang boom, we're back by dinner time.
And stopping the god of war is our foreordinance. As Amazons, this is our duty. But you are not an Amazon like the rest of us.
Oh, alright, okay. So she's not an Amazon like the rest of you, so it's not her duty to stop Ares. There's just one teensy little problem with that. Why don't you go? Don't you walk away from me! Understandably, Diana is sick and tired of sitting around and watching everybody do nothing, so one night, she decides to scale the Dark Tower, steal the Godkiller sword, and leaves with Steve for the war. Meanwhile, Dr. Poison has discovered a way to restore General Ludendorff's strength, essentially turning him into a super soldier. And thanks to some very convenient indoor wind, the Doctor also manages to rediscover the formula for the hydrogen-based gas that gas masks would not be any help against. Same formula that she conveniently already wrote down before this scene and conveniently didn't bring up until the camera was on her. How considerate of her. And thankfully, before we have any time to process just how ridiculous that last sequence was, we cut to Diana waking up in London. Now, Diana's obviously a bit of a fish out of water here, which gives the film some welcome comedy, and one of the funniest out-of-nowhere, ooh, shiny moments that I've seen in a film in quite a long time. Diana goes from arguing about what clothes would actually make some good battle armor to...
Oh, baby!
No babies.
yeah, that. Next, we're introduced to the absolute delight that is Lucy Davis as Etta Candy, who brings Diana shopping for a proper set of clothes. And it's at this point that I find myself wondering, just how many of those outfits did she rip out of the 226 that she put on? And who pays for that sort of thing? Does Steve? Does the U.S. government with our tax dollars? Or, since Diana's the daughter of Zeus, do the gods pay it? Does Mount Olympus have some sort of tab that's opened in every country in the world to fix this sort of thing? These are the questions that keep me up at night. I'm probably digging too much into this. Moving along, our heroes are ambushed by German officers, but there's no need to worry because Diana's bracelets are bulletproof, allowing Diana to waste the ambushers just in time for Steve to deliver Dr. Poison's notebook to his superiors. Steve tries to convince his superiors to allow him to take some men to go after Dr. Poison, but they're not too keen on the idea because they're currently trying to reach a peace with the Germans. And so Steve is told to do nothing. But as he already established earlier in the movie, he's already tried to do nothing. It didn't really work. So he ignores the orders and starts recruiting people to help him and Diana get to the front. And it's here that we're introduced to Samir, who's a fast-talking spy, and a marksman named Charlie. No, not him. That's Charlie. Admittedly, they do take a bit of convincing first, but after Diana throws a man across the bar with one arm, and Professor Lupin shows up to give Steve some galleons, Samir and Charlie do agree to take them to the front. Which brings us to the No Man's Land scene, which of course everyone's been talking about. But is it as good as everyone says it is? Well, undoubtedly, yes. Why? Because we've spent the whole first hour or so of the movie building up to this. At the beginning of the movie, we see a young Diana being told the story about how the Amazons were created specifically to protect the humans from Ares' machinations. We see her ignoring her mother's orders at the beginning of the movie and taking it upon herself to go protect the people fighting in the war because that's who she is. And perhaps just as important, the filmmakers take a lot of time building up to that No Man's Land scene. We see Diana walking across a bridge, past all these soldiers who are returning from the front with serious wounds. And through Charlie, we see the kind of mental scars that can be left on a person from a war like this. We see her walking by crying children, sinking horses, and even more wounded soldiers as she's making her way to the trenches. And we can see just by the look on her face how much these sights are torturing her.
Especially since she's constantly being told you can't do anything about it and we've got to move on.
And then finally, when a lady pulls her to the side in the trenches and tells her about how Veld, the city that's across no man's land, has been enslaved by the Germans and the people are dying of starvation, you can tell that Diana, she's just had enough. And I don't even think she was listening to Steve when he was talking about how it'd be impossible to cross no man's land because they'd been there a year and barely gained an inch. Or even when he says that this isn't what they came here to do. And Diana caps off this bill by saying,
No, but it's what I'm going to do.
and that line just cements what her character's all about to the audience. So if you found yourself getting chills from this scene like I did, that's probably a big reason why. Oh, and on a side note, I really love how they waited to use the Wonder Woman theme until this scene. It would have been really easy for them to use it earlier in the film, say when Diana was fighting off the German ambushers. But she wasn't really Wonder Woman at that point. She was still kind of listening to what other people were telling her and saying that she couldn't do this or couldn't do that for one reason or another. This is the first time that she really said, you know what, I don't care what you people think or say. There are people over there that really need my help, and I'm going to go help them, even if I have to do it alone.
Thematically speaking,
That's when she became Wonder Woman. And this was a really great way to use the film's score to reinforce that idea. And I could honestly go on for another hour about how great this scene was, but I don't want the review to turn out to be longer than the actual movie, so let's keep it moving. So after a photographer takes the photo that we saw Diana get at the beginning of the movie, Steve calls Etta Candy to talk about what's been going on and learns that General Ludendorf is actually at German High Command, which, as it turns out, is only a few miles away from where they are. However, Professor Lupin is having none of this, and he explicitly forbids them from going to German High Command to stop Ludendorf. Of course, just like when Steve was forbidden to go to No Man's Land, or when Diana was forbidden to leave the Mascara and do anything about the World War I, yeah, we see where this is going. They go to German High Command. And there, Serene sneaks Steve in as a German officer, and Diana gets in, presumably because she's become some sort of a fashion icon after stealing someone's dress. Seriously, have any of you guys seen this? Apparently that sword in the back of the dress, that's a thing now. The internet's a weird place sometimes. And as a result of the wardrobe change, Steve gets noticeably distracted when he's talking to Dr. Poison because, well, okay, I can't really fault him on that. I was pretty distracted too. Diana and General Ludendorff get into a bit of a heated discussion about the Greek gods, and just before she can stab the bastard, Steve stops her. He tells her that if they kill Ludendorff before they figure out where the poison is, they won't be able to stop Dr. Poison from releasing the gas into the world. Diana is less than pleased with this, and chases after Ludendorff anyway. But it's already too late as he fires the gas onto the city that Diana had just saved. And after searching the town for any survivors and finding none, Diana chases after Ludendorff. And following a quick but still pretty brutal action scene, she kills him. Of course, this doesn't actually stop the fighting like Diana thought it would, which is a good thing because that would have been a really quick climax. It wouldn't have felt very fulfilling. And it also calls back to what Diana said at the beginning.
What one does when faced with the truth is more difficult than you think.
She's faced with the idea that men are just as corruptible as their mother warned her that they were. And then some more of her mother's words come back to her.
Be careful in the world of men, Diana. They do not deserve you.
And she has to ask herself, does man really deserve her protection? And Steve actually reinforces this doubt a little bit by saying maybe even he doesn't deserve her protection. But he also adds that that's not really what it's about. It's about what you believe. But we'll come back to that in a minute because Professor Lupin's here, and I'm sure he'll help Diana through this conundrum just like he helped Harry Potter so many times before.
You're him.
I am, but I am not what you thought I was.
I'll say, where are your wizard's robes, man? You look positively foolish.
I am not your enemy, Diana. I am the only one who truly knows you, and who truly knows them as you now do.
Wait, say what?
All I ever wanted was for the gods to see how evil my father's creation was.
Oh. No.
They have always been and always will be weak, cruel, selfish, and capable of the greatest horrors.
Professor Lupin's a god. But it's okay. I mean, remember the beginning of the movie? The German officer leaning through Zeus's god magic barrier? And Diana's got the magical, super awesome god killer sword. One stab, we're done. Get him!
God killer.
Oh dear.
My dear child, that is not the god killer. You are.
Well, at least she's got a chance again. So Diana and Professor Lupin fight. Meanwhile, Steve and the gang realize that the only way to save the day is to hijack the airplane carrying all the deadly gas and blow it sky high. Steve decides to bite the bullet while Diana and Professor Lupin continue to duke it out, and... Oh my god! I have so many more questions about the Potterverse now. Like, why do you even need Harry Potter? With this guy on your side, Voldemort's toast! But getting back on topic, Steve sacrifices himself, momentarily pushing Diana over the edge. And remember when I was talking about how Diana wasn't sure whether the humans actually deserved her protection or not? Yeah, we're back on that now. Ultimately what this fight was about. Diana reconciling herself with the fact that, well, humans may not always deserve the protection, it doesn't really matter because Diana believes that every life is worth protecting. And Ares trying to convince her that that just isn't the case. Not every life is worth protecting. For instance, the psychopath that he brings into the fight. Ares believes that humans are by nature evil. Ares believes that Dr. Poison is the perfect example of what humans are at their core. They're evil and thus should be wiped off the face of the earth. But what Diana discovered in the battle, i.e. that humans are a little bit dark and light, is I think what the Amazons missed. Because yes, humans aren't perfect, and some of them, like the psychopaths, can be downright evil. But does that make it okay to kill them? It's almost a Superman-like character trait. Diana really believes in protecting the people, even when they're not perfect. And that was illustrated best when Diana decided to not drop the tank on Dr. Poison. This also reinforces what was set up in the No Man's Land scene. Diana really is a true hero, and the guardian to all of humankind. And of course, since this is Hollywood, that inner realization gives her the power that she needs to beat Professor Lupin. How dare you! Now the wizarding world is doomed! Doomed! And in the next scene we see that the war is over and the movie ends the way it begins, with Diana finishing her narration.
I used to want to save the world. To end war and bring peace to mankind. But then I glimpsed the darkness that lives within their light, and learned that inside every one of them, there will always be both. A choice each must make for themselves, something no hero will ever defeat. And now I know that only love can truly save the world.
So that was Wonder Woman. I don't know about you, but I thoroughly enjoyed every single minute of it. As I said in my spoiler-free review, this movie gets a 9 out of 10 for me. Would have gotten a 10 out of 10, but I really don't want to start my first full-blown review with a 10 out of 10. I really don't like what that sets up. So 9 out of 10 for me for being a great movie with great characters, great action, and really great comedy.
But I want to know, what did you think? Did you like the movie, or was I being a little bit too lenient on it?
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe, and also hit the bell next to our names so that you can be informed about all of our future uploads. But until next time, thanks for watching, and have a great day.